From the Skyterra Wellness Retreat, this is the Inspired Intentions Podcast, where we help people build the skills and mindset to live a healthy life. This presentation is for educational purposes only and is not intended to provide any medical advice. The presenter will not evaluate, diagnose, provide any prognosis, care, treatment, or care treatment plan, nor any advice, opinion, or consultation regarding any of the foregoing for any attendee. This presentation is not suitable for obtaining medical care for your treating medical provider.
Welcome back, Inspired Intentions listeners. Have you ever been too busy to eat? Have you ever been so busy that you've been running around and you haven't taken time to feed yourself, and then all of a sudden you can hear your stomach gurgling and making a lot of noise, and you hope that the people next to you don't hear? Well, sometimes that happens to me when I'm in the podcast booth, and Alan can actually hear it on the sound that he's recording for this podcast. So that is something that I try to avoid, try to make sure that I eat, especially before we record those. And if you can relate to that and more, I have a really great episode for you today. This is all about hacking your gut and what happens in your stomach and your gut and in your microbiome. And who better to talk about that than Dr. Teresa Campanile? Welcome back.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Rachel.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Campanile, would you mind just reintroducing yourself to our listeners?
Sure, yes. I am an integrative medicine and internal medicine doctor, and I work here locally. I have an office right next to Skyterra and work very intimately with guests who are staying here to reclaim and reset their health. So I like to talk to you about anything that your guests are dealing with, and I would say your guests are dealing with exactly what everybody in this world is coming up against. And what we have the opportunity to do here is really hone in and focus on it. So I've been really excited to talk about this just as an issue that is pretty broadly applicable right now.
Good. And I will say, my husband doesn't listen to this podcast, so I can mention this. After you and I had planned out what we were going to talk about today, I mentioned this to him, and he wanted to know more about what we had been talking about. He was really interested from the beginning, just, again, because he deals with some of these issues. And I was like, you have to listen to the podcast. There's so much more. So I know, again, there are going to be a lot of people who will be helped by what you have to say today. So thank you so much for coming back onto our show. And listeners, just to add on to what Dr. Campanile said, for guests who are staying at Skyterra, if you're looking for an additional layer of oversight for your health and different ways to explore health and improving it when you're here at Skyterra, we offer very close access to Dr. Campanile, whose office is just past the edge of our property. So we're so fortunate to have you.
Thank you.
Yep. But let's start with the basics. So what is the microbiome and how does it impact our health?
Yeah, so the microbiome as a word has been showing up much more popularly in our culture, and I'm so happy about that because we're acknowledging that our beings are made up of more than just our human cellular component, and that we interact with our environment, not just interact with them, but we are composed of bacteria. It's part of our own organism. So to a degree, the microbiome is a nice reflection that our digestion is more than just ourselves, is a reflection of our interaction with the environment, but it does kind of minimize that digestion is also more than just the bugs in our digestive system. So today I want to get into the microbiome, our digestion being more than just our own physical bodies, and beyond that, what the bacteria and everything else that kind of contributes to a healthy digestive system, and most importantly, what all of these symptoms mean in terms of what your body's trying to tell you about what it needs for digestion. So the microbiome is just a word for the bacteria that live on our bodies. It does not necessarily imply your gut bacteria. It implies the bacteria that live on your skin, your lungs, your inner mucous membranes, your intestinal lining. The microbiome is a word to recognize the concept that we are maybe even more bacteria than humans. So people have attempted to quantify this and have estimated something along the lines of 40 trillion bacteria exist within our
Wow.
intestinal lining, and then another 50 trillion in our skin. So combining these is hundreds, trillions, whatever that word
Wow.
is.
Yeah.
And compared to an estimate of about 30 to 35 trillion human cells. So we might be, we're more bacteria than human. It blurs the line of where we start and our environment begins. So the role of these bacteria, we are very new and early to learning about the complexity of that, but unequivocally, we find when we investigate what these bacteria are doing for us is they are monitoring our environment. They're giving us feedback about where we are, what we're interacting with. They are a big part of knowing, are we in winter or summer? Should we be, are we in stress or non-stress? Should we be soaking the nutrients out of our food, or should we be using these nutrients to construct things? They are such a fundamental part of that signaling. So the microbiome is something that we are learning to both not threaten and injure, and how to support and regrow and really nurture those cells. Now, when we're born, because of the natural birthing process, we adopt a lot of the bacteria. We inherit that from our family lineage. So we start with some pretty good stuff. And part of what I want to talk about today is what happens over the course of our life that either threatens or stresses that in a particular direction. One very fundamental principle in all of medicine is that the body does not hurt itself. So if your microbiome is changing, it is changing as a reflection of your environment, and your body is calling for new bacteria to serve a different purpose. So ultimately, working backwards from that, fixing a microbiome is a lot about changing the environmental stimulus so that your body will then call for different bacteria to live there. So there's a true intelligence that the body uses to instruct which bacteria live there. They're truly selected for. This is not something that happens to you. It's something that your body is morphologically changing to adapt to whatever environment it sees over and over and over again. A good example of that is, we know that there's bacteria that don't really do much for you, lazy bacteria, we'll say, that just really kind of hang out and wait to digest carbohydrates. So those tend to be bacteria that will cause a lot of bloating. They won't really do much for you. They won't help you synthesize hormones, won't help you with your digestion of nutrients. And how do they get there? This is not an attack on the human body. That likely comes out of a consistent environment where you are asking your body to consistently digest carbohydrates or consistently access high energy for a stress job. So your body's going to naturally send signals to invite bacteria who are just supercharged, really good at digesting carbs and nothing else. It comes at a price, though. Now you lose the function of all those other bacteria that are there for multi-purpose use, for helping you digest heavy, fibrous, vitamin-based foods, or helping you synthesize hormones, or helping you detox from your environment so your liver doesn't have to work so hard. So yes, an environment that is very heavy in, say, carbohydrate exposure will, over time, invite more carbohydrate digesters to occupy the intestinal tract. It's there to help you adapt to your environment, but the cost of that is you lose so many others who do other functions for you.
And Dr. T, I just want to make sure that I understand. So what we know is that, is it true digestion can only happen through the bacteria?
Well, that is a very complex question. I think bacteria are a big part of it, but no, they're not in and of themselves. If all we had was a tube with bacteria in it, I don't think much would happen.
Okay.
In fact, the digestive process really happens before food even enters our mouths. The first parts of digestion, and when I say digestion, I mean breaking down of nutrients, absorption of those nutrients, and then penultimately signaling to the cells on what to do with those nutrients, believe it or not, happens way before food even hits your tongue. So when you're Rachel, when you are sitting here feeling your tummy rumble,
Yes.
this is digestion. Your body is starting to secrete digestive juices. It's telling the cells, hey, it's about that time of morning, something's coming. Everybody get awake, start to break down lipolysis fats, and let's start to mobilize. We know something good is coming down the hatch. You haven't even so much as taken a bite of food yet, but you must have some form of routine in your day that your body is expecting that. So it's starting to digest before you eat. So that points to the power of the brain-gut connection. Yeah. Your brain is looking for smells and routine, the time of day, the even state of mind that you're in to signal to the cells, start digesting, something's about to come down the hatch. So the brain starts the digestive process every single time. And when that process starts, the next physical organ response is as you're preparing for that food to come down, you secrete your upper digestion. So this is the step 2 of digestion. I tend to divide it into 3 steps: the brain digestion, the upper juicing, pulverization digestion, and then the lower intestinal microbiome digestion. So that second phase is when digestion has begun, because you've started thinking about food, or you've tasted it, or you're starting to salivate. The next part is the upper GI tract starting to secrete the juices. This is very important. Your stomach has to be prepared for food to come down. It's trying to hit a critically low pH. When the stomach, or the furnace as I like to call it, gets nice and hot and warm, all kinds of things start to happen. It's like a well-choreographed dance. When that furnace gets hot enough, the valves above and below it shut down, close tight, rather, to contain that furnace. When those shut, that triggers a reflexive downstream reaction to your gallbladder and your pancreas starting to prepare their juices for full pulverization. When that happens, even the lower intestines are starting to get that rumbling signal. We're waking up the bacteria, telling them in about 30 to 60 minutes, we're going to have some nice pulverized food coming down for you all to feed on. Get ready for it. There's some good stuff in here. So only that last step, that third step is, yes, your bacteria, and they are the workhorses of that extraction. Yes, the cells of your intestines are designed to allow nutrients to pass, but the bacteria are critical in that. They kind of access that pulverized food and draw out the nutrients for us, and then by some complex interactions with our intestinal lumen, get those nutrients across where we need them into the bloodstream. So there's a lot happening in there, and I think talking about it in that way, the dance of it, is going to really help us understand what you can do to make that choreographed, very, very complex and specified sequence of events happen smoothly.
I love that. And then just to clarify, so your microbiome is bacteria that you're born with based on a lot of different factors: your mom, your genetics, where in the world you were born. And when everything's operating the way that we want it to be, you describe those as worker bees.
Yeah. So what do you need to do to keep the penultimate goal is when you keep that dance well synchronized, those bacteria love that. They're very happy to receive that early message and wait for the pulverized food to come down. They're excited to help you access those nutrients and do work for you in the process. So keeping them happy starts at the top. Again, our brain is signaling to those guys, those worker bees, as you will, way before we eat food, and giving them the opportunity to receive that we need you, we're excited for you, and we're going to feed you is what keeps them fighting and alive and multiplying. We don't want them shriveling up and creating vacancies, basically. Vacancies in the gut, even if it, classically people are recognizing the injury of antibiotic overuse. The idea of, as we wipe these guys out, it's a lot of work to get them to grow back. And even worse than that is what if they don't grow back and you get these lazy neighbors that move in? So yes, feeding those healthy worker bees basically is penultimately starts at the top, and giving them a very strong signal that we need them. We are going to call on them regularly, and we're going to send them well-digested food down the chute. So what that means from a brain standpoint is those bacteria get stressed when we do not do that dance from top to bottom. When food just kind of ends up coming down the chute, everybody was still asleep, nothing is pulverized, there's a real panic reaction. And actually, sometimes the lazy neighbor is better at just capitalizing on that. The lazy neighbors will just kind of, sweet, here's a dose of carbs, forget the rest, send it down the chute. And that won't really get you much out of your food other than a little energy burst. So giving them that time, the ritual of preparing your food. And, I know that's hard in modern culture, but the idea of maybe even just picking one meal that you can dedicate to, that what you described at the beginning of our podcast is very desirable. If your stomach rumbles this time of morning, it's because you have set up an expectation. That's your bacteria saying, Rachel,
what are you doing?
it's 8:30, and that's good. They've been awake, ready to digest for you for a while, and they're anticipating that you're about to. So that is exactly what you're looking for. People who describe, I have a bowel movement at the same time every morning, I get hungry at this time, that's really worth trying to build in your body. So, it could just start around the practice of one meal. I'm going to make this meal very routine-based, same time, and see if I can get my bacteria primed to this. Even just the preparation of the meal itself. I love that Skyterra puts a very strong focus on the ritual of eating, meeting at the table, letting your eyes just get excited about what's plated in front of you. This can be mimicked at home and is designed to be mimicked in every format of our lives. We're supposed to look at the food, appreciate it, be in extreme gratitude for having food, and all of those emotions leading up to the meal are also known to prime those bacteria and allow them to multiply in anticipation of the food. So that is absolutely one way to give the advantage to those bacteria over the lazy neighbors. Then that furnace. The furnace is the next thing. Your brain's going to tell your furnace to get real hot for whatever you're about to eat. I think we live in a world where there is a lot of, more than ever, we have a weak furnace situation going on. Our stomachs are not extremely efficient at secreting acid, at pulverizing food. You will know that this is your furnace if you have a lot of heartburn, indigestion, loose stools, and there's various presentations of having insufficient stomach acid, but I would say insufficient stomach acid is probably a much bigger problem than too high of stomach acid. Even if you have heartburn, very likely low stomach acid, you're just not getting that furnace hot enough to close the valves. So learning to take care of that furnace is about, furnaces like to get hot in periods. So having dedicated meal times rather than snacking all day could be a practice that will reinforce your furnace to burn hot in periods of times. I also think that there are some old folk medicine practices that are geared around preparing and getting that furnace hot. So if anybody remembers their grandparents or even great-grandparents' stories of people taking an after-dinner digestive drink, a port, an artichoke liquor with, these really old world liquors tended to be really bitter or really acrid. And something about bitter and sour really gets that furnace kind of tight-toned and secreting. So something that I like to prescribe to my patients is, especially if they're having weak furnace symptoms, I like to say, play around with a little apple cider vinegar, maybe just a tablespoon or so. Put some water in it. It can burn going down. Don't hurt yourself with it. But something like some sour apple cider vinegar or something bitter, like even just bitters that you would get to mix a an alcoholic beverage with, Angostura bitter, something that just makes your tongue pucker. Anything that makes your tongue pucker is going to make your stomach pucker, your gallbladder pucker, all the way down. So it's a nice way to mimic that synchronicity, that dance of your gut. So yeah, weak furnace, you can try and play around and see if bitter things around mealtime or apple cider vinegar might help relieve those symptoms. And then, of course, I help people choose advanced therapies for that as well, how to modify their acid, digestive enzymes. There's other options. When you get all the way down to that third step of the gut, there's only if you've done those upper things correctly, your healthy microbiome is at such an advantage from having warning signs, well-pulverized food. It honestly is just going to put them at an advantage and cause them to multiply and be happy and prosperous. And there's less work to do to knock down that ratio of lazy neighbors to worker bees. When you focus on those top two parts of digestion and you get down to just resetting the microbiome itself, it tends to be a lot easier if you have already addressed those upper causes. At that point, you can just kind of take on some, probiotics or live foods, frankly, the original probiotic, yogurt, kefir, sauerkrauts. And then, of course, there are foods that help to kind of soothe the lower intestinal tract and decrease inflammation so it's less sticky, which the healthy worker bees like. So there's ways to advantage and disadvantage the microbiome in that sense. And those therapies tend to center around, again, some old folk medicine therapies like cabbage juice cleanses were very popular for cleaning out the bad and toning the lower intestinal tract. And nowadays, as a supplement, that we call that L-glutamine. L-glutamine is what we've derived from cabbage juice to do that. Apple cider vinegar actually is a great lower intestinal cleanse as well. And then now there are some marketed probiotics that are just more aggressive at pushing the lazy neighbors out and getting the worker bees to regrow. We're in the phase of studying which probiotics might be strong enough to do that, which ones don't stick and just kind of go down the hatch into the toilet. So that's kind of a newer phase that we're in. But that phase tends to be a lot easier if you've already worked on those upper two level systems.
Got it. And thank you for that. That was a lot of really great information. How do you know, what are some other maybe warning signs that you need to restore the balance? I know that you are a big proponent of really just trying to tune in and listen to your body. So what are you listening for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So healthy digestion feels like most of us have a pretty strong reference point from childhood on this. If you remember, you did not have to think too much about food other than when you were hungry and your stomach was rumbling at you. And then there were periods during the day where there was no payback, there was no lingering symptom from breakfast. You could just move on from your day. So yes, your GI tract will talk to you around eating time, but other than that, I would not think anybody reporting that GI symptoms linger with them, that there's some kind of payback or come down after a meal. I know that my stomach's going to rumble after this and it's going to take some work. That I would take as a sign that something is off balance. Heartburn, stools that are improperly digested. So proper stooling is truly, I know everybody's different in stools at a different frequency, but the truth is stool is such an important sign that our microbiome is being well fed. Even if you're somebody who has a bowel movement every 2 to 3 days, I would try to reclaim a daily bowel movement that is not too loose, not too hard. They say kind of like soft S-shaped as it lands in the toilet. And just a regular daily bowel movement that you can count on and not think too much about is a pretty good sign that your microbiome is happy.
Okay. What about any kind of food cravings or anything like that? Is there something that we should be looking for if we're, craving a certain kind of food?
Well, some cravings truly come from our brains and our pattern formation, and I think those are kind of easy to identify. in this period of my life, I just got in the routine of having coffee at this time, and now I can only think about coffee when it gets to this time of day.
Yes.
So people can place those brain cravings pretty easily. Other cravings that are less situational. So, oh gosh, I'm craving sugar, and it doesn't, whether I need energy in the middle of the day or it's late at night, I always have craving for the same thing. That tends to be, that could be your microbiome talking to you. So these bacteria, it's not just the brain that signals to the bacteria, the bacteria signal back. Let's say your body is preparing for a full spectrum harvested salad with vegetables and all kinds of nutrients. You see that salad, you get hungry for it, your brain releases all the chemicals, gets everybody excited for it. And then you happen to be at the airport and it looks like it was a real salad, but truly those are highly preserved foods. They're designed to still look fresh, even though they're probably pretty old. This is why we tell people to look at the labels. The more things you can't recognize on there, the more we are working to make this food look like food. Well, it's not. Well, we can trick our eyes, but and the brain will get everything kind of going. But by the time that salad, which is not real salad, gets to the microbiome, those bacteria are going to figure out that they were tricked. There's no vitamins in this for me. So they will send a signal back to the brain. We are not full. We keep going. We are not going to stop until we get our hands on some vitamin B12, some vitamin B, whatever it was waiting for. So that signal from your bacteria back to your brain is a very, very primitive and reliable sign that you're not getting enough nutrients out of your food. So there tends to be a lot of shame around cravings. I love the report of cravings. It tells me my body needs more nutrition. So yes, I think a craving should be often interpreted as my bacteria are detecting that I didn't quite get it right with that meal. Let me try something else. I love the snacks that you guys keep on hand here. I use them often as I'm on my way over here to write a podcast. I will pick up some of the pumpkin seeds or dried fruit, and it's amazing how I could be thinking about something that I'm craving at that kind of day. But if I get that in my belly, within the half an hour, now I'm here talking to you, and I'm not thinking about what I was craving before. So that tells you that a craving really means something, even if the wires are getting crossed and you're thinking about something that you don't really need.
Okay. So we've talked about the lazy neighbors, and we've talked about the worker bees, and we've talked about the 3 different aspects of what happens in digestion and making sure that we have the dance choreographed and happening smoothly. To bring all of this together, Dr. Campanile, we always like to leave our listeners with some things that they can try at home today. So what are your suggestions for some things that listeners can do to just start to heal their microbiome?
Great. So because our digestion is so much just a part of our fundamental nature, I think there's a lot you can do at home. This is our birthright to be able to feed ourselves and extract from food. So I think you can play around with a lot of experiments at home and see how your digestive system talks back to you. The first thing I would do is think really hard about the synchronicity of allowing your body to adapt to whatever you do have access to nutritionally. So before we even talk about altering what you're eating, I want to give my body the best opportunity to adapt and optimize what it gets out of that and reject what it doesn't want in that. And doing that takes preparation, routine, and anticipation for the GI tract. So would call this the 3 R's, which is routine, ritual, and relax. So routine is give your body the benefit of anticipation. The ritual is either choose a meal that you're going to prepare in the same way, enjoying the routine of setting a placemat, making your coffee, and then putting your eggs down in this corner every morning. Whatever it is, your microbiome will learn to anticipate that as you start to put down that placemat. For other people, the ritual can be using bitters or apple cider vinegar before the meal. Just a very herbal, chemical way of letting the GI tract know something is coming down. So the routine and the ritual of eating, and then the relax is the mindfulness. So I've heard people say it doesn't matter if you are eating the cleanest, most healthiest, high nutrient diet or going through the drive-through. If you are in your penultimately max stress load, your body is going to register that. Everybody knows the score in there. So if your microbiome is getting the signal that you're under stress, they're going to be looking for critical elements, critical nutrients for energy, extracting maybe just the carbs and leaving a lot of the good stuff. So the relaxation, the mindfulness that comes around food, that one's difficult because ideally we would have periods, long days, weeks where we are truly relaxed, prepared to rebuild our bodies, extract nutrients. And when we don't have that, what we're really fighting to do is just come down off of our stress shelf for just 15 minutes to prepare for that food. But it's worth doing. In experiments, we've shown that even 30 seconds of thinking about your food, what it's going to taste like, and the gratitude that you have for that food changes the amount of chemical GLP, which is a molecule that controls our craving and our cellular response to food, by at least twofold. And that is not a person who is changing their job, changing whether they meditate at night. That's just a person taking a 30-second pause before they start to eat. Chewing your food longer. So I think that the routine, the ritual, and the relaxation around periods of eating are probably the most important thing to reclaim first, because the downstream things can't really change without that. The next thing I would experiment with is getting that furnace nice and hot and burning. So again, using the bitters or apple cider vinegar to get it revved up. And maybe talking to your doctor about some strategies if you think that you have a weak furnace, a lot of heartburn or undigested particles in your stool. And then lastly, I think that there is, the last thing as you get down to your lower gut is recognizing that the best way to support your healthy bacteria is to make sure that they are getting good, fully pulverized food. So the pulverization we kind of talked about through the upper furnace, but good nutrients. I've learned to kind of look at food now in a different way. Healthy versus not healthy for me has been a challenge in this world where our food is changing so rapidly. So I tend to look at food now in a different way. I just look at it and I say, how much payback am I getting from this? How much good nutrients is in here versus how much work is it going to be for my body to process that? And if you don't get every meal right, that's okay. But within a day, you want to make sure that there are foods that you know are a good payback for those healthy worker bees in your gut. So they like foods that are not fake salads. They want the real nutrient-dense stuff. The fresher, the better. So out of your garden, local from the farmer's market or from the produce center in the grocery store, not shipped from the other side of the planet, somewhere around here. And those foods will just naturally give the advantage to your healthy worker bees. Probiotics, probiotics and supplements for lower GI tract stuff, I think gets a little bit into the weeds. But I would say if you try those things around ritual, relaxation, and routine, you try a couple of those folk medicines, apple cider vinegar, some bitters, and then you'd move to your lower GI tract and you're saying, I'm eating some good, healthy nutrients, a lot of fiber, and you're still having GI symptoms. That's where I think I would pull in help. Pull in help to understand why your symptoms are, why your body's still telling you something's off balance when you're hitting all those notes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Campanile.
You're welcome.
It's always so helpful for me personally and for all of our listeners when we have you on the show. And I think I'm going to go have a snack.
That sounds great. I'll join you.
Thank you again. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Inspired Intentions podcast is a production of Skyterra Wellness Retreat. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Subscribe on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be found. If someone you know might benefit from this podcast, share Inspired Intentions with them and give us a 5-star rating. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life. Thanks for listening.